choir, right? I also think of like social justice as a choir, right? You hear music the whole time, but sometimes someone's stopping to breathe. And we all need to breathe a lot right now. Like a lot of people feel like the world is on fire, and in some places it's literally on fire. And so if we view it like as a choir, hey, we're all singing this song of social justice and advocacy and peace, just know like we don't have to sing every second. Like we can sing our
Mhm.
piece and then rest.
Hi, and welcome to the Queer Vision Podcast. I'm Becca, and this is my co host.
Coe.
And today we got to sit down with Mercedes McLaughlin. She is amazing. She's a mindfulness educator. She's also a mother. She is married to a woman who I'm assuming is very supportive because they seem very, very great. And we got to talk a lot about what her experience is with the therapy. We also got to experience what it was like for her raising a child who had a lot of disabilities for a little bit and all the troubles that go through with pregnancy. So sit back and be prepared to learn something because it's amazing. She's very insightful.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So normally we just start out like with your name, your pronouns, and then just a little short blurb about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Mercedes McLaughlin. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Wilmington, North Carolina. I have a small group private practice called Moonstone Ballast Therapy and Wholeness, and we work on supporting the LGBTQIA plus community here and throughout the state, as well as the BIPOC community here and throughout the state through a holistic wellness lens. And then I'm also a mother to a beautiful 18-month-old girl who is medically complex, and I live here in Leland with my wife and my daughter, and my mom and our dog Khaleesi.
That's so cute. I don't even know what to start with because that's a lot of information. How
Sorry.
did you get started? How did you get started working with this?
Working in mental health.
Uh-huh.
So I originally had planned to go to divinity school after undergrad, but my wife, we ended up moving. And so I thought the next closest thing was going into clinical social work. So I had some personal experiences with mental health, like through myself and my family and friends, of course. Mental health, kind of, touches us all, right? We
Right.
are mental beings. So I made the switch to clinical social work, and I worked at a real crisis in Greenville, North Carolina, where was one of the call centers for like when you dial for a suicide or crisis line. And I really had a passion for the work. I think it's something that especially, almost now 10 years ago, mental health was still not the buzz it is today. And so I got in the program, and it really just, was a big calling for me, and I felt really at home with it. And I am just like a helper, a healer, and lover at heart. And so it was a really clear fit for me.
That's awesome. So do you work with like only queer individuals and what is your experience with the group and how things are going right now?
So no, I don't only work with queer individuals. I have a specialty in working with them. And
Mhm.
we service the LGBTQIA community. I think it's important to know our practice either has clinicians that are part of the queer community, and I use queer as an umbrella term instead of saying LGBTQIA plus every time, that are either part of
Yeah.
the queer community that, and if they're not, maybe they have family members that are a part of it, or they have beyond typical allyship. So there is some committed work in personal or professional social justice for these communities. They've got continuing educations and serving this community. And so, you said how is with everything going on right now. It's tough work to be in, to be a queer person, and serving queer individuals, because there's a lot of rights and issues in the communities, and I can talk specifically what those are. But just as an overview in this, us starting out, there's a lot of stress, social communal stress for queer individuals right now. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's really heart wrenching depending on the situation or that person's identity and how that is being impacted by the world at large right now.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable and a little bit scary. So how do you manage, like, whenever you're helping everybody else through what's happening right now? Obviously, you're going through it too. How do you, like, take care of yourself? How do you do that work-life balance whenever you are also being affected by so much stuff?
Well, I'm a pretty like logistical and grounded person. I'm also a pretty emotional person. I'm like in the sense that I'm very in touch with my emotions and feelings. And so first of all, I have my own therapist, like and
Mhm.
my own support system, which I, highly support anyone in any helping profession to have some kind of support outside of just friends and family professional support. So first of all, I have that good support system. Recently with some political things going on, I it's been challenging, because in therapy, right, we're going a very fine line between validating and acknowledging and like challenging anxieties and irrational fears and or things that have not to come to pass yet. So, we've really and you'll see this a lot in the professional if you follow any therapy pages, we've really had to support clients in grounding what's in their control, what are actionable steps, what are staying informed to be like, hey, these are the steps you might need to take to support yourself, and I can talk more about things like that. And so for me, it's being informed about current events, not being inundated, and then finding that balance within myself and supporting my clients of like, okay, what is the reality here, what do we need to do to take steps to support? And I think for me it's like taking the action. We've taken a lot of legal steps for our family to protect us, to be as secure as we can. And so I think for me it's kind of like walking the walk and talking the talk and making sure that like I feel as secure and stable as I can in a tumultuous time, in order to support people who may not have the same privileges that I do or support or resources, to make sure I can direct them to those.
That's amazing. Would you feel comfortable sharing some of those resources or, and we can even share them in the show notes and stuff like that if needed. And also just like some of the things maybe that you've done so that maybe people that are in the same situation could know what they can do?
Yeah, I would love to share that. And after, I can email for the show notes if there's anything, specifically we can share. I would love to do that. Well, one thing for my family, I have a daughter, and I was the carrying partner and bio mom. And for anyone out, any queer parents out there that are worrying about the carrying versus non-carrying partner, my wife is the preferred parent. So, DNA is only part of the story in parenting. Who we love and who we care about. We all know chosen family in the queer world. Well, guess what? You don't have to worry. Your child will still love you if you did not birth them. And that goes for all types of family, including adopted, surrogate, foster family. So just if you need to hear it from the camel's mouth, here it is. I am not the preferred parent. In North Carolina, there is what is called a step parent adoption. It's not called that in every state. Some states call it a second parent adoption. In North Carolina, the language is a little antiquated, so it is called a step parent adoption. And that is done through the clerk of courts. A lot of times they'll recommend attorneys for this. It's about $3,500 to $5,000 depending on like the family attorney. We did do it ourselves. My undergrads in political science and justice studies, as well as history. I have, a pretty, a pre-law background as well. I've, being a social worker, there's a lot of documentation preparation. So we took the task on ourselves. It was quite a bit of legwork. And I do have some information I can share about that too in the show notes as well, because in New Hanover County where we are, they will put the second parent, or I'm going to say two female same sex couple for the example. They will put that the second partner on the birth certificate, but that is not legally binding to give parental rights, especially if we have an overturning of Oberfeld. So we did that. That's a pretty extensive process, including getting an FBI and SBI, which is State Bureau of Investigation background check. Typically, it does involve a home study as well, which can be waived in certain circumstances. And we ended up doing it for all in all less than $400 to $500 with the methods that we took versus 3 to 5,000. So that's one big step. There is a list. Some TikTok therapists and attorneys have gone pretty viral sharing this. I may even just share the TikTok with you. There's about 8 documents they say that you need to protect to protect like marriage equality and to protect, the business standpoint of marriage, right? Because we think in the US, like marriage is a union. a spiritual
Right.
union. It's also a financial and business. It has to do with how the government views you as not only for your tax bracket, but also for things like benefits, hospitals, and medical attorneys. So there's about 8 documents in that packet that attorney has recommended that pretty much says, okay, you are still married if we were to not have marriage equality any longer. And I'm not going to go to the whole list off the top of my head, probably because I can't remember it, but there's things like power of attorney, medical power of attorney, your will, a living will, as well as about 4 or 5 other forms that go over that kind of protect those property rights, those assets, your children, custody rights, and including that step parent adoption for families that applies to. And so those are some of the steps that we've taken and started. We're not quite finished with all 9 of those documents, but to ensure that if for some reason Oberfell is overturned next week, I think they're sitting on the 7th for it, that, there's some of those protections still granted if that is overturned.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's really like powerful for people to hear, though, to like, I don't know, just to remember the agency that we all do have, because in scary times, like you said, it's so important to just do what you can and be satisfied with that.
Yeah, and there is so much more we can do for our community and support systems outside of even legal protections. And that's been one thing I've really encouraged my clients is to identify where you have impact. If we look at, the history of capitalism and news media, there's a lot of paralysis in the way
Mhm.
information is delivered and conveyed. Keeps people kind of in this state of shock, right? Almost in a fight or flight. So we're in this freeze state and we forget, like, I love that word agency that we do have. And so there's a ton of community involvement too, that even, we all have differing levels of privilege, access, and resources. And
Mhm.
so if we stay in this paralyzed place, and I think we've all been there, right? Doom scrolling, performative engagement on social media, and we forget that there in each of our communities, there are ways for every level of privilege, every level of resource that we can impact another person and
Mhm.
impact and support our community. And that's another area I really promote for clients of like, okay, so maybe you don't believe in voting anymore. Maybe you don't believe in these systems that have been designed to fail us a little bit. What do you believe in? Do you believe in other people? Do you believe in sports? Go join a rec league. Go volunteer with that. Do you believe in feeding people, right? We know that's a huge issue right now. Go, donate your time. I mean, even for some of the foster agencies, for some of for clinicians, I mean, and the food banks and pantries that serve these communities, right? And we know that trans and non-binary teens are one of our large unhomed population, and part of the runaway population, that 1 hour, 2 hours can create impact in our communities. And so I think it's also reminding people that while the news and media may keep us paralyzed, that there is so much action we can have to contribute to creating a world that we want to be a part of.
And I love how you so openly kind of accept that we all have different interests, we all have different passions, we all have different things that we feel called to. And I think it's sometimes so easy to feel like if I'm not doing XYZ, then I'm not making an impact. And I think it's important, especially for like younger people, to hear that. Because I think a lot of times we do feel like we have to do.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that keeps us stopped, right? If we feel like we
Yeah.
have to do everything and we can't do everything, well, let's do nothing. And
Yeah,
we forget
exactly.
there's a great imagery of, what we're capable of, but what we're capable of today. And
Mhm.
sometimes we think we have to do all of this today, but we just got to do 10%,
Right.
1%, 3% to get to that 100. And in a year, we've hit that 100. So I think
Mhm.
that's important to remind people, not only in the queer communities, but in any minoritized community or just anyone, right? Like the impact we can have today is not negligible. It is part of the bounty for tomorrow.
Right. And I think the way that you were talking about how, like, what can you do for your neighbors? Like that kind of thing. Like, I think sometimes people forget that your strengths, even though they might seem like nothing to you, are very, very big to somebody else. So whenever you can go and help somebody, that takes so much off their plate to be able to do what they're very good at for everybody else. So the more community that we build, the better for every single person. So yeah, like you were saying, like just pick one thing to do today one thing that's easy for you today, and maybe the rest of it's gonna be done by somebody else, and that'll be fine.
It's a choir, right? That's I
Mhm.
also think of, like, social justice as a choir, right? You hear music the whole time, but sometimes someone's stopping to breathe, and we all need to
Mhm.
breathe a lot right now. Like, a lot of people feel like the world is on fire, and in some places, it's literally on fire,
Mhm.
and so if we view it, like, as a choir, "Hey, we're all singing this song of social justice and advocacy and peace," just know, like, we don't have to sing every second. Like, we can sing our
Mhm.
piece and then rest.
Yeah, and that's oh my gosh, there's so much symbolism in that one because then there's also the different parts and everything too, like, that's beautiful.
And altos are just as good as sopranos. Like,
Mhm.
we need everything
Thank
to
you.
make harmony, every
Thank
piece.
you.
And I think it's also like that remembrance of like we're all one people at the end of the day. Um, and just I feel like I had more that was going with that, but I don't know. Something that you said about that really just resonated with me. Just yeah, that we're all the same, and now is the time that we have to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt and trust that we're all fighting the same fight, even when sometimes it feels like we're not. Um, and obviously, there's levels with that
Sure.
when it comes to personal boundaries and respect. But
Right. We're all fighting to survive.
But I think what you said is, like, a really great point, because things are so polarized with
yeah,
political parties, with ideologies, with philosophies, and going back, you said something like, how am I taking care of myself?" Like, and, what am I doing? Is, like, also living a value-based system, and when we look
mhm,
through the system of values, we can relate to anybody anywhere because we
mhm,
have way more in common. I'm someone who world travels a lot, and I've had clients that are of different political, religious, cultural ideologies than me, but if we look through a values-based lens, we share something with everyone, and if we
mhm,
practice looking through the lens of values, we start to find it really quick.
mhm,
Because the same person who's across the street that may have signs up of a different political party and may share things that maybe spew hate online, maybe they value community. Maybe when your dog gets out, they grab your dog for you and bring them back and they value helping someone out. Maybe that person who, shares these different beliefs than you, maybe they value family and they're trying to do the best for their family, what they really believe is best, even
mhm.
though you guys have totally different views of what is best. And that values based lens can be really powerful. That's another reminder I offer clients because when we look through the values based lens, we're like, oh, wow, we actually have a lot more in common with people than we think.
Right, and I think that kinda just hit on the fact that, like, we're all affected by propaganda. So, like, stop using the buzzwords. Stop talking about the 3 topics that everybody wants us to talk about to divide us, and talk about the things that brings us together because we're not gonna get through this if we're so divided that we can't breathe.
Absolutely. I just think about, it's silly, what, not silly, but nostalgic. We talked about 9/11 and we just, passed that anniversary a couple of months ago and united we stand, divided we fall, but that is the propaganda's teaching, right? Like we have been taught by modern media and propaganda and these big, these six horsemen of modern media to divide us. And
Mhm.
Mhm,
when we think about identity and hyper identity, even everything down to sports teams and state pride and college pride, right? We've really been born into a culture that seeks first to divide versus unite.
Very, very true, unfortunately. So what do you do in your free time with your wife, with your family, to just, like, step away from it all?
I like to travel. I'm really big into traveling. I love people. I love culture. I love experiences. I want to taste it all, see it all, do it all, feel it all, see every mountaintop. We had a really hard year and a half after my daughter's birth. We were in the hospital for about 5 months. So since we've been home, we have traveled a lot. We have gone. We use and I don't know. Can I say brand names and stuff? Is that okay?
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. We use trustedhousesitter
Mm.
.com. It's a great website. Everyone's background checked. And basically you go and pet and house sit for people and it's free. Like, I mean, you pay a month, like a yearly subscription fee, which is if you stay one night at one place, it pays for it. So
mhm,
we've done that. So we've really traveled a lot, whether it's across the state, on the East Coast, or across the country. And, now that my daughter is going into that toddler stage, we're kind of finding that rhythm. I'm a scuba diver and a free diver, so I love to be in nature and water, hiking, camping. So we kind of like just we really enjoy, being on the go and experiencing the world and the people
Mm.
around us.
That's amazing. You do seem like a very life-oriented person, even before our interview, talking about the fact that you were just like, "Yeah, I just like being outside as much as I can and just scooching the spiders on over."
Yeah, and some religions and cultures believe we come back here many, many times, and whatever your spice on life is, I really value it. I I think, we have this duty to ourselves and other people to kind of identify and go for our wants and dreams and desires and, create as much good along the way as we do that. And I think about people with severe profound disabilities. I think about people without access to resources. I think about people who are in situations they want to escape, and I don't have all the privilege in the world, and very few people do, but with the resources and abilities I have, I'm going to use it to the fullest extent and honor that and enjoy that for myself and empower other people to do the same.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like that's also so powerful, just being able, I don't know, to acknowledge the privilege and then also use it. I think sometimes we are in a point in society where, I don't know, I feel like some people feel guilty to have privilege. And I feel like it's a difference when you're using it in the wrong way. But if you're just using your privilege to live life, like, oh, I have these experiences, I have this money or this tax bracket, I am in these rooms, let me do what I can in those rooms and at least, I don't know, experience it, because there's someone out there who probably really wants to and isn't able to.
Yeah, I agree. I think like almost like privilege has become this like, this polarized again, that
Mm.
polarization, this dirty word. And instead of acknowledging like when we do have privilege, we need to honor it. And there's so many different types of privilege and they can change for a lot of people at any given moment, right?
Mm.
And I think like I'm just really big into the transience of life, like the fleeting quality.
Mm.
And we don't know, we're not promised tomorrow, we're not promised our privilege, we're not promised our homes. I mean, bless the people on Eastern North Carolina, up in the Outer Banks who just lost their homes last week. Just the
Mhm.
tide came and washed them away. We're not promised any of these things, like, right, these concepts of marriage, right, gay marriage, like we've had it for 10 years, but might be overturned. And so I think we have to honor what we have when we have it, because sometimes things are fleeting and they can fleet and be better too. Like it's not like, oh, like
Right?
this very Buddhist philosophy, like life is
Mm.
suffering, it's just going to keep getting worse. But things can fleet into better things
Mhm.
too. But
Uh-huh.
I think it's about that mindfulness of honoring where we're at and doing what we can with what we have right now.
And I think like that's also just such a radical act too in
Mhm.
this day and age. And I mean, I think this is something I even touched on in therapy a long time ago, is just like somehow finding the peace in the middle of the chaos, like sitting down in the middle of the fire and just breathing is so powerful, because I feel like it is the opposite of what it feels like someone or something wants us to do, you know?
100%. That's so incredibly valid. And, you know, um, I'm a mindfulness teacher as well. And there's this quote like, peace doesn't find us when everything is still. Like, we are peace when we are still. So when we are
Mhm.
still in the chaos, when we're still in the storm. I had my own like mindfulness quote of myself. And it's just like, anyone can find peace on a mountaintop in the Himalayas with a waterfall. I want you to find peace in Walmart on Black Friday. I want you to find peace in rush hour traffic. I want you to find peace in the middle of a protest or a rally, right?
Mhm.
Like, when do we let that peace, that beauty, all of that find us? Because if we wait for all these external factors to line up, we're gonna be waiting our whole lives.
So very true. And I feel like that kind of also points to the point, oh my god, points to the topic of being okay with being uncomfortable. I think a lot of our society has trained us to run away from discomfort because, again, if we are uncomfortable talking about hard topics, we will not talk about them. It will create that divide even more. And there's a difference between discomfort and feeling unsafe, right? But differentiating that is something that I feel like we aren't necessarily encouraged to do. And I think that is very true. I think sometimes there are events or times where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm fairly uncomfortable. I don't know who to talk to. So being able to step back and just be like, I will just listen is something that like I've needed to work on, right? So I very much love that thought, just finding peace in the times where you aren't meant to be comfortable, and that's okay.
Yeah, and, I tell clients, they'll be like, "I'm coming to therapy. What's the secret? Like, tell me the secret." Like, just jokingly in the first couple of sessions, I'm like, "Well, you've got to get comfortable with discomfort, and you've got to choose the short term. You've got to stop choosing the short term comfort that gives you the long term discomfort, and you got to start choosing the short term discomfort that'll give you long term comfort." And so when we think about things like peace, human rights, all of these issues as we go from the micro level to our friends and family up to these macro systems of our governments and different nations. Yeah, from a, from childhood they said don't talk about religion or politics. That's the things we need to be talking about. Those control and shape our world, and we forgot how
Too
to
much.
talk about these things. That's all of my studying from undergraduate to graduate school is religion, politics, and social science. And so we've lost that ability to do that, and
Mhm.
that lets the voices who are comfortable do that have even more power, right?
Right, and same thing with being able to say, "I don't know." Like, you don't have to know every topic. You don't have to be the winner of the conversation. It's okay. Say you don't know and go learn it. Or be like, "Hey, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together." Which is very hard to do, but it's do it anyway.
Humility is hard. I mean, like for all of us, right? Like we want to have the last word, we want to say it. And so it can be, I think people struggle to be like, I don't actually know a ton about that. Like
Mhm.
I haven't ever read peer review articles. Like I have no idea. And someone else is telling us what to think and feel, and critical thinking skills
Mhm.
like kind of go out the window at that point, right? Like if we're always told,
Exactly.
and we're inundated with that in media.
And I think that's also like a negative effect of cancel culture in a way too. I think people are so scared a lot of times. I think to not know and to say the wrong thing or
Make mistakes.
just make a mistake, come across the wrong way because then they're afraid they're going to lose like everything. And I think time and place, there are some people who deserve to not be in the place that they are and to be, brought to reality. I think as a whole, we do have to learn that we're all living this life for, I
The
mean,
first time.
the first time, depending on what you believe.
I mean, even if you do believe in reincarnation, this exact thing has not happened before.
Yeah, clean
So,
slate.
this exact topic, this exact life, you are still learning how to do it.
Absolutely.
It's hard. Anybody wanna have an existential crisis? Just listen to this podcast, you know?
I love that. If you need a therapist, I love existential crisis. It's like my favorite. Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about philosophy for 3 hours. We got this.
No, I love it
Oh,
too.
you guys can talk about that and I will just absorb it because
Just like take your
my mind is like
spiders and your philosophy and go away.
honestly, I will sit inside with my book. You guys can be outside talking like this.
I love this background. Is this like outside of your house?
It's just
Wow. At
yeah.
first I thought it was like a green screen when you first get in
No.
here, but then I'm like, oh, it's just that pretty.
It
Yeah.
almost feels like we're, like, watching a news feed, like, you know how, like, whenever you're, like, connecting with blah, blah, blah in this area, and then you're like, "Hi, I'm reporting from my backyard."
It's funny you say that because I have clients. I do all telehealth now
Mhm.
since COVID actually. I'm telehealth, and if it's not raining because I don't have a good rain situation in my backyard, I work outside. My
I love
clients are like,
that.
"Oh, it's so nice you're outside." I'm like, "You can go outside." They're like, "No, we're not going. I'm not going outside." I'm like, "Oh, like it's beautiful. We live in the same like city. Like go outside. Be outside." They're like, "No, thank you." I'm like, "Okay, have you been outside today?" No. Okay.
It's a thing. There's, like, it's the feeling of things crawling on you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I do get that.
I'm okay without it.
No, it's okay. And I think it's not for everyone. Sun, especially in the winter, the seasonal
Mhm.
depression for my clients is about to start to creep in. We just had the cursed
Mhm.
time change.
Mhm.
So I'm really big on just encouraging being outside in the winter months, for so many reasons. But yeah, if you don't like creepy crawlies, maybe find a way to be outside that's like like a paved area or like a garden with like a bench, somewhere that you cannot have creepy crawlies.
Yeah, or like a back deck with like a little like nice blanket on it.
Yeah, yeah, like the
Mhm.
comforts
It's
of
the smell the
home.
fresh air.
Yeah. Or even just a
Exactly.
screen door in your house so you can just like see it from afar.
We're really coming up with like the easiest way to get even a breeze. I love
I see
this.
the plants behind you, so you've got plants. There's nature. You're doing great.
Yeah, that's true. They're a little overgrown in my backyard, and then this is a money tree.
Oh, wow, it's large.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, it's really grown. Does it start from small, or is that the size it's always been?
I got it, like, probably 2/3 this size, but I also have 2 other ones in the house, and one of them, like, blew. Like, it's, like, huge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I got my friend one from, like, Food Lion, and it was, like, this big, and they've grown it, and it's huge, so
Wow.
a nice abundant plant for abundance.
Yes.
Huh.
No, it's not working for you?
No. Oh, no.
I'm
It's really
sorry.
not. It's funny.
Not yet, right?
Not yeah, exactly. Gearing up.
When I was given this, I had full clients, and I was making, like, enough money to survive and put into my savings. Not anymore.
Ebbs and flows.
There's some great affirmations. I'm really into affirmations. Money
Hmm.
comes easy and frequently. So
Mhm.
just, like, say that every time you, like, water the money tree.
I love that.
Real.
I love that a lot. Do you have, like,
Sometimes
the
affirmations
affirmations
feel
app?
like lies if we don't like, it's not our situation though also. What'd you say?
Do you have the affirmation app? Because I have, like, an app that literally sends me, like, 5 a day straight to my watch.
Oh, no, I don't have that, but that sounds fun.
It's called the I Am app.
Oh,
It's
I
lovely.
am. Yeah, don't I don't know how far to go into this. This is like not what our topics are, but if we're gonna talk about affirmations for a second, this is something speak on mindfulness
Mhm.
too. The I am is just one of the chakras of the body, and each chakra has a different affirmation. I am, I feel, I see, I speak, I breathe. So, sometimes if anyone is into affirmations and you want to amp it, or sometimes the I am ones don't really hit it for everyone. You can say, I feel, I speak. And to make a affirmation, we say, why am I? Why do I feel? Why do I speak? To
Mhm.
give ourselves example. So like, hey, I got a money tree. I'm not feeling abundant. And we say, why am I abundant? And then you have to kind of go into that gratitude mindset and shift and start to list that off. So just a little affirmation hack. Go through all of the kind of experiences of being and then asking yourself, why are you that way, to give yourself that evidence.
I love that. And also it's one of those things that feels like once you explained it, I'm like, why have I never thought of it that way? But thank you for sharing that.
Because it's simplified. Because we overthink everything.
Real. That has been the theme of this episode.
Every
Or not
episode.
our
Every
lives.
episode. Every single episode, we're like, "Oh, I thought too hard on that," or yeah,
Um,
I can't. Wait, you haven't done that? Wait, okay, so every single episode, at some point oh god,
that was a really
it was aggressive, I'm sorry.
aggressive.
At some point, Chloe will say, "My brain just left me," and I was really surprised. I was waiting for that the last time whenever you were like, "I think I had more in that sentence." And it didn't happen. I'm really proud of you.
I think I gave up on like I didn't want it to be a running thing.
That is
So that happens every episode.
every episode.
It's the ADHD. I pretend it's not my daily life, but it
It really is.
I'm like,
It'll
oh,
come
I'm
back
just so
to you.
off today.
It'll come back to you when you need it most.
Yes, exactly.
Or 3
I
o'clock in the
don't
morning.
know if
We are getting close to the 45-minute mark-ish, and you said that you wanted to go around 4, so, is there anything that you specifically wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on?
I know I kinda sent that list of questions, and I can go, like, right up literally until 4 too, just for reference. I just can't go too
Okay.
much over. I can talk about my daughter and, like, queer families and,
Yeah.
being a medically complex mom if you guys want to do that.
Yes. So explain to us then what your life looks like with your daughter and being medically complex.
Yeah, so she is, quote unquote, I think like the term is temporarily disabled. I kind of have to start you from the beginning because we're in such a better place now than we have been. She is a little miracle among miracles. She was born at 23 weeks, 23 weeks and 4 days. Typical pregnancy is 40 weeks, 10 months. And she came 4 months early. She was born at home, which is another miracle. I EMTs had come and they wheeled me into the doorway and she popped out. And for my spiritual friends, she was born in a threshold, a doorway. And we spent about 5 months in the NICU. During that time, she had 3 collapsed lungs, 3 chest tubes. She had ammonia twice. She had several bouts of sepsis. She was treated for meningitis twice. That was never like a confirmed diagnosis. She had a level 1 brain bleed. And she had eye injections as well as laser eye surgery, group B strep, Klebsiella, and then ultimately she did have G tube surgery to support her life. So it was a really rocky start. We moved in to the NICU. I said, "Can we stay here?" They said yes. We didn't leave. I had to go home for 3 days near the end because I got sick and they sent me home. And my wife and I said, we're going to do everything we can to support her life. We set the hospital record undocumented for kangarooing, which is skin to skin holding over 600 hours. I pumped 8 times a day and we were there by her bedside, and we said we weren't coming home without her, and we didn't, do that besides those 3 days they sent me home. But and she came home, and so she does have a G tube. She can eat orally by mouth, and she's pretty had kind of cyclical vomiting for quite a while. And we said, okay, we're home. We're going to do this. We both came out with, some PTSD and postpartum depression. And we said, let's just do it. So we traveled a lot this year with her and navigated the world through this lens of not a severe and profound disability, but this otherness space. And, I've talked to a lot of moms and, my specialty is also postpartum mental health. And so I've seen a lot of spaces with other micro preemie families, and they're kind of in this gray space between like babies that have the potential to be totally developmentally appropriate or not. And so, for a long time they had to rule out cerebral palsy and things like that. And she is a little miracle baby. She's met all of her developmental milestones. She is now my walking toddler, getting into everything. She just fell on her nose the other day and got her first splinter. And so the G tube's still a part of our life, so we have to think about that when we travel. Access to, we're not camping a ton right now. Access, able to have access to clean water, which, depending on where you're at in the world, I think this is another like vote for traveling and understanding privilege. That's a real thing. I have family in the Dominican Republic who like us to visit. We cannot go there because they do not have water with the sanitation level that the United States does, period.
Right.
Food and waterborne illnesses are really common there. We have to have the access to, she was on the pump for a while, and things like hurricanes, that changes for people with differing levels of ability, right? Hurricanes aren't fun if you lose your power and you're really hot and you're just annoyed. They can be life detrimental if you have some type of disability where you need electricity for your food supply, for your medical supplies. So it really has given me a lens into these different communities and how daily life is impacted, and our daily lives have been impacted. But again, we're in this like liminal space between typical life and, living with somebody with a disability in the family. And so it's really given me a passion to, look through life with that lens of, we think about things like DEI being taken away. Let's say it: diversity, equity, inclusion. What falls under that? ADA, the American Disabilities Act. Those things, those resources that people have fought to have. Even things, for families, we think about, oh, can I get there with my stroller? What about people who have to use motorized devices, wheelchairs, assistive devices? So when we think about, that lens of equity, inclusion, social justice, I think we forget some of our most minoritized populations are people with disabilities, and that is a category that any of us can fall into at any time. That is the one minoritized community that you can be born into, but you can also become a part of at any time. And so, our experiences have really just widened my lens. When we think about advocacy work or social justice or equity, of what that means, what does really being inclusive mean, and how do we do that in our businesses? How do we do that in our community? And what kind of resources exist for people who are in that other physical ability place?
That's amazing. And I think you hit on two topics that we don't talk about enough. I'm sorry. So, like, the first one is pregnancy, right? Is birth in general. I mean, giving birth and even having a healthy birth, an easier birth, can be very, very traumatic. And we don't have nearly enough resources to teach people what it's going to be like to go through this, what the options are, what could happen, and then also to help them at the end. I mean, I had a friend that had an emergency C-section and she ended up alone and bleeding out. And she's like, still years later, after another birth, has reoccurring trauma from that, right?
Of course, yeah.
And we just don't have that support, right? And then the other one is this disability, right? So, like, I completely understand what you're saying when it comes to feeling like you're in that middle ground, right? Because that's kind of where I am with mine. I am healthy enough to do a lot of things, but not healthy enough to do them all the time or to, I still need some support, but I don't need enough support to get the support, right?
Sure.
And so I feel
You're
like
not
that is
struggling
something that
enough.
we exactly, yeah, it's not enough, it's not painful enough, it's not yeah, yeah, and so I completely understand that traveling component of, like, I have to be careful, I can't go camping, I can't be somewhere that I can't get service and things like that, and it really does put things into perspective whenever you have somebody in your family or you go through these things to be like, "Oh, shit, I never had to think about that stuff," and once you do think about it, it's everywhere.
And you're almost, and I use this language intentionally, you're almost blind to that experience of other people. Like, right? You are almost, I said to my brother, we just got back from Wyoming. I'm with my brother. So my daughter is getting a feed because of like the vomiting. She has to kind of stay sitting up, and like we can't move her for during the feed and about 30 minutes after. So she has
Mhm,
to stay in her stroller. Her stroller is her mobility device in a sense, right? It's a
Mhm.
stroller because it's for a baby, but also she
right.
needs that to be able to get nutrients. And I said, I was like, oh, I love, this national park is so inclusive. It's so adaptive. There's a lot of, mobility assistance throughout it. And, my brother's a big through hiker. He's hiked the AT, he's hiked all of New Zealand, he's done the El Camino in Spain. And he's like, I've never noticed if there's ramps.
'Cause you didn't have to notice.
He's like, I never thought about it. And, there was a couple of the trails we were on, had, walks, but then had like large sets of stairs. And he was like, well, let's just carry her up. I'm like, well, she can't go in that position. And what would someone do in a
Mhm.
wheelchair? So we said, I was like, this is something, access to our natural wonder, right? Being in nature or anything. And he said, I've never thought about it. I've never had to think about it. Why would I look if there's a ramp or not a curb on the sidewalk or if there's stairs? Like, I'm an able bodied person. I've never thought
Mhm,
about it. And I
Mhm.
think how many of us have that privilege of being able bodied. And that can, and we talk about even talk about neurodivergency too, some of the challenges with those communities that we've never had to actually think about these things.
Mhm.
But for other
mhm,
people, they have to think about them or suffer a large scale, anywhere from a
right.
small to a large scale consequence.
And we aren't asking for people to think about it all the time, right? That's a lot of thought process we don't wanna go through,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, I don't wanna take that from them, but I want them to sit down sometimes and be like, "Oh, you're right. I do hear your story. I do hear you venting. I do want to do something about this." Or the right people, right? The people who design the parks, the people who, go ask somebody who has these experiences and say, "What would make it easier for you?" It's not that hard to ask somebody who knows what is happening.
And you're so right. And I think, as we come to a close here and just to sum up that lived experience, rather it's in travel, it's in nature, it's in therapy, those things we talked about, like we have to listen to people.
Mhm,
We have
Mhm.
to listen. You don't want to be outside? Don't be outside. Like don't let the bugs get you, but if you want to be outside for some reason, let's find a way to get you outside.
mhm,
Mhm.
If we have a neighbor, let's listen to them. Let's find that value.
Yeah.
Let's connect with them, because like our lived experiences are one of our most valuable things that we will ever walk through this life. And we have to be able to use that for ourselves and others
mhm.
and make space for other people's lived experiences too.
So much, so much. I love that. Very insightful. I love this. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, this was super fun. I'm so excited you guys had me, and I would love to, I don't know what your lineups are, and I've been, I am a mom to a toddler, so I haven't been
Mhm,
super available, but I'd love to come speak on, pregnancy and maternal mental health. That's, another really big passion of mine, and that's not
mhm.
talked about enough either, especially for queer
100%.
families, especially.
Yeah. We would love that, and I mean, if you are a writer, if you write anything like that, we would love to put that in the magazine too. Well, whatever. We wanna hear your story, and we wanna hear more about it. How can people find you?
That's a great question. My professional social media is quite inactive.
Okay.
Um, and I think right now that it's, for Instagram, it's just Moonstone Ballast, Moonstone Ballast, Ballast, and as well as on Facebook, Moonstone Ballast Therapy and Wholeness. And then
Mhm.
you can always send me for any kind of speaking engagements or therapy, referrals, community resources. You can always just send me an email to Mercedes at Moonstone Ballast Therapy and Wholeness. It's not my fault. It's so long. I promise. It's the way school makes you do it. I'm happy for people to email me with questions, comments, concerns, on anything we've
Love it.
talked about today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the stories. I love it.
Yes. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Chloe. I think, you both are doing your part, right? You are showing up, and I'm sure in many other ways too, but like doing this, amplifying the voices of queer people in our state, y'all are creating that impact in that world around you. So we all thank you from the community.
Thank
Thank you.
you so much, genuinely.
This is a great conversation, and definitely wanna have you come back at some point, and, you have to get going to an appointment here soon, but
Yes. Yes, I am.
thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your day.
Thank you. Y'all too.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Queer Vision podcast. Once again, I am your co-host, Coe, and this is,
I am Becca.
and we are the Queer Vision Pod and Queerlina.org. Today, we sat down with Mercedes and had a really great conversation, and I hope y'all pulled as much from it as I know that we did. It was exactly the talk I needed today to like recenter myself and be more present in where I am. So hopefully it did something like that for you too. You can find Mercedes at Moonstone Ballast on Instagram, and her email will also be in the description if anybody has any questions or wants to shoot her anything. You can find us at queerlina.org or queerlina.org on all socials, and also the Queer Vision Mag on Instagram and Facebook. And that's all right now because I'm doing my best and we're doing our best. Thank you so much for that.